So good morning, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for choosing us. I know you have a lot to choose from. Excited to have this conversation with my panel and all of you today. And I believe that the start of any journey or relationship is best and most successful when you come from a place of giving. So today we're going to give you some practical knowledge that you can take with you back to your businesses and apply. We're going to give you some take-homes and downloads at the end. That address there at the bottom, there's a landing page. You can download some cool stuff. And if you're really nice and good, we'll even give you some swag. So come see me after and we'll hook you up. Or if you ask some nice questions, we have some buzzers in the audience. So here's two guys I would have loved to had lunch with. Came from very different worlds, right? But both dreamers and visionaries. And Walt dreamt of an ideal place where people could go, have a dreamlike experience, a place of happiness. For all of you that are taking photos, we're going to download this whole thing so you can have the PDF, all right? Because I do the same thing. Yeah, right? You don't have to do that. So Walt had dreamt of this place that most of us are familiar with, as also known as the happiest place on earth, and this incredible experience for kids and adults alike. And he dreamt of making it happen through the most infinite attention to detail, and that's how he really pulled it off. Alan Turing, from a very different world, a world of logic and the idea that you could solve problems with logic and ones and zeros, but he also came from a place of humanity in computers. 70 years ago, he came up with the concept we now refer to as the Turing test, of this idea that a computer would deserve to be called intelligent if it could trick another human to believing that it was interacting with a person. So today we're here to see how these two things can come together to create an extraordinary customer experience. And here's what we're going to tell you. We're going to talk about, Debbie's going to talk about the 3 pillars of great customer service, what chatbots can do. Clara's going to talk about that. She's also going to talk about what chatbots should not do, for sure. An exploration together of how these two things can combine. And certainly, but not lastly, the idea of extraordinary customer service can be a fantastic marketing tool. Anyone here ever been to Zappos in Vegas and taken the tour? Tony Hsieh? Yeah, amazing. So Tony, speaking of customer service being a marketing tool, early days of Zappos, he knew that he really said, I didn't care what was in the boxes. I knew that I was going to build this company with extraordinary customer service. And if you've gone there, and if you haven't, you definitely should. But they do things like there's no call time limits. They have a record of a customer service call that was like 9.5 hours. They create crayon drawings and mail these people. It's incredible. So I highly recommend that you do that. I'm going to hand it off to Deb to do a little self-introduction.
All right, so as Kevin mentioned, I have a long and storied Disney career, 34 years with the Walt Disney World Company in Orlando, Florida. And actually, I started there when I was 17 years old. So I was experiencing this amazing culture at a very young age, and I didn't really realize that's what it was. And in fact, I really had no intentions of staying for 34 years. I was in college for a totally different career, but it's just such an amazing place, and I was very fortunate to grow up, if you will, in that organization. Of my 34 years, I spent about 25 years in leadership positions, operational leadership positions, managing various operations at various levels throughout the company. I spent 6 years as a Disney Institute facilitator and program designer, and then after 34 years, I cut the cord with Mickey. It was really hard. And started my own business with a friend of mine, co-founding a training and more or less leadership development company. We worked that together for 8 years. Went our separate ways. She stayed with training, and I really wanted to move into the advisory, consulting, coaching arena, and I have done that for the past 4 years with a particular focus on customer service as my specialty, helping organizations to understand what I learned all of my years in that business, and how can you create a customer-centric culture for your own business, regardless of what your business is. It works for everyone. So that's a little bit of my background, and Clara has some interesting things to tell you.
So my name is Clara Soto, and I'm the co-founder of Reply. This is actually my third company. The first product I made was an app that removes traces of your ex from your Facebook profile.
I like that.
Thanks. It was called Kill Switch. And we launched it on Valentine's Day. And we actually had a whole partnership with the American Heart Association, so broken hearts could help broken hearts. Not a
Always
monster.
marketing.
Fun.
Yeah. And then from there, I started a wearable tech for live events company where I would equip attendees at large-scale music festivals, food festivals, corporate conferences with NFC-enabled wristbands so they could digitally capture the event experience without interrupting it. And we were fortunate to sell that company in June of 2015, and now I'm on to bots. And all those things sound very varied. Very varied, quite different. But the sort of red thread throughout my entrepreneurial career has been, finding that human element in technology. Technology is just sort of a means to an end, and the fun challenge for me is identifying that human thread. At Reply, we've been around for a little over a year and a half, and we are a conversational AI solution. So we help companies better reach and serve their customers on the messaging and voice channels they already use via chatbots. Some of our clients are Coca-Cola, Samsung. We launched Starbucks' first bot. It was the pumpkin spice latte bot.
Why not, of course.
Yeah, people really loved it. So I'm really excited to be here today and to talk about how we've been. We've also been ranked by Forrester in their top 10 chatbots for enterprise customer service, which we're really proud of. We're the only startup to make that list, and we didn't pay for it. Big deal.
And earlier this week, you won a pitch, South by Southwest.
Oh, yes, and we won a pitch competition at South by with USAA, so really proud of that.
Good stuff.
Cool.
Good stuff.
Thanks for having me.
So, brilliant women on the panel, and then there's me. Yes, I'm some of those. Well, I guess I'm all those things. President and Chief Growth Officer at Bigbuzz Marketing Group, host of a podcast called The Buzz Bowl, where I talk to brilliant people like this. We're relaunching season 5 on Thursday of next week. I used to be in the music business. I was a recording engineer and a drummer, and used to be a rock star. Not actually, did not, but we gave it a go. And that's me there on the right. I thought it was a really good idea to marry my guitarist. That's her there in the lower right. I thought it would keep the band together. It did not. The band has broken up, as has not the marriage. We're still married, so.
They don't need my app.
So I felt it was improper just to embarrass myself. And luckily, my co-panelist here just to my left, Debbie, and friend of many years, is a bit of a 90s metalhead. So she loves herself some Rob Zombie and Disturbed, and we've all got our closet.
I'm never hanging out with him again.
Yeah. and we can't leave Clara out. So Clara was at Comic-Con. That is her dressed as Darth Vader, and I think that was your
my bachelorette party.
your bachelorette party. Yeah.
I'm a really big fan.
So yeah. This should be fun. Okay, so speaking of fun, technology test drive. If everybody would, this will be the only part of the show where I say take your phones out. Please take your phones out and go to pollev.com at Bigbuzz. You're going to go to your browser, open it up, punch that in, and you will be part of the show. So let's get on with it. We're going to keep it really, really simple. You ever eaten a taco? Here we are, South by Southwest, Austin, Texas. And go. Anyone had a taco this week? Oh, okay, so it's working out pretty well. Yes, 100%? Everyone. Okay, so, oh, wait, no, we've got a couple people. Oh, boy, this is quite a race. So, seems we have a couple maybes there. So, for those of you who said maybe, this is a taco. We're in Austin. Go get yourself a taco. You can get a taco at Dairy Queen in Austin. So just go get yourself a taco. Trust me, some of the best tacos here at South by. But on to something a little more pertinent to all of us. I want to get to know who's in the audience. If you could, staying on that same page, the question should change automatically. Now, we want to see who's here. I know we got interactive wrapping up. We got music getting started. Marketing, yes. Marketing and technology are in the lead. Fantastic. That is very helpful to kind of know who we're talking to today. So, we're here to talk about service. Who has had a conversation, does not necessarily have to be a bot, but has gotten some sort of customer service through a chat, something we're really familiar with and comfortable with. We talk to our friends through our texting and Facebook Messenger, so it is a very comfortable human behavior these days. So yeah, huge amount of us have. Did you know if it was a bot, and did it have a human handoff? That's something that Clara will talk about for sure, that idea. So I know I have very often, probably all too often, I don't love that I have to get on with AT&T. They use the bot kind of as a triage. You start, is it a billing question? Is it about international services? So, okay, looks like a lot of us have, not sure, right? A lot of us are not sure if it was a human or a bot even. I mentioned AT&T. I have hopefully it could be a 10-second story. So I don't know if you remember, some of the cable companies can't get along with the networks, and the networks have shut them off. I remember the night of the Oscars, ABC shut off the Oscars, and I got online. I was so pissed, and I got online with Fios just to experiment. And I had a chat, and by the end of the chat, I had Fios. They signed me up. I had no intention of signing up. It was just such a great, positive experience. So, wow, yeah, Amazon seems to be a clear winner in there. But so lots of it going on, for sure. So what does extraordinary customer service look like? There is one place, is an example that we're going to allude to today. It is not the only place you get extraordinary 5-star customer service. And we'll talk about other things, but the easiest one is people that talk about that magical experience at Disney. Yes, that a lot of what Debbie and I have worked on with brands is founded in the principles, but has been slightly changed and improved, I'd like to say. So lots of you have been there. So how does it make you feel? And this is our final question. The test will be over. So I'd love to see some of the words about how it makes you feel. Valued, absolutely. Nothing makes you feel more insignificant than bad customer service, right? We've talked about those as well, and that can be completely damaging to a brand. Well, fantastic. I am going to turn it over to Deb to talk a little bit about what extraordinary service can feel like.
So when we talk about extraordinary service, if I were to ask each of you to define extraordinary service, it would look different for every single one of you, right? And this is the challenge in delivering extraordinary service, because extraordinary service it can be very personal to us. For some people, extraordinary service may be, give me what I want, give it to me when I want it, give it to me quick, get out of my face, leave me alone. You do that for me, I am a happy camper. Others want to build relationships, will you be my second mom, right? So it looks different for every single person. Now, what can it do for your brand? When we talk about your brand identity and your brand image, extraordinary service is really the thing that differentiates you from the competition. The reality is, no matter how unique our brand, or no matter how unique the product or services that we're developing, somebody else eventually will be copying that. So the way that you have to distinguish your brand is through extraordinary service. When you make people feel exceptional about doing business with you. Stats have proven it over and over again. People will pay more money to go to a place, such as Disney, which is not inexpensive, right? If they feel like they've gotten extraordinary service. It is the thing that differentiates you. It can build customers for life, and building customers for life builds your brand image and your brand identity.
So can we do that with a bot, Clara? I'm going to pass you the clicker,
there we go.
as I affectionately call it.
Yes, is the answer.
Absolutely.
So, I think, before kind of diving in, it's always helpful to sort of to cut through the hype. Obviously, there's a lot of hype around bots. It seems like so many were diving headfirst into it, and we, saw a lot of interesting and some successful, some unsuccessful adoptions of technology. So what I love to do is just take a moment and kind of cut through all of that and talk about what exactly a bot is. And really, the promise of a bot is, to Debbie's point, that personalized one-to-one communication at scale. One-to-one communication is really vital for companies to maintain their relationships. And for years, that's meant call centers or stacked social media teams. And the problem with these is they're expensive and they're really hard to scale. And the reality is people's preferences have changed. We are now officially in the messaging age. Messaging is global. It's something everyone can do. It's already installed on phones, and it's the preferred communication method for the largest consumer group on the planet. Millennials, like Alex here, whose parents
like
at
Alex.
27 were married with a kid, and then he at 27 prefers ordering pizza online, so he never has to interact with a human person. I mean, I'm Alex a little
been
bit.
Alex.
Yeah, I think everybody here has
At
likely
one time,
been
right?
Alex. So really, at its core, bots are that's the reason why you've been hearing so much about bots lately. Just a quick definition, chatbots are essentially software that can automate actions, services, and access to information via messaging and voice channels. Just a couple definitions to just, again, in the spirit of cutting through that hype. Oftentimes AI and bots are used interchangeably. The reality is that, you can have a very successful bot without AI. AI is a very broad term. This is one of, there's so many definitions floating around. This is one of my favorites. It's the most kind of concise. That AI is essentially data-driven technology that can learn to perform some pattern recognition and problem solving at human levels or above. There's two branches of AI that are typically applied to bots. The first being machine learning, which in essence is pattern recognition, and the second is natural language processing, NLP. So natural language processing is essentially the ability for a bot to understand free-form text. Think of it like the fact that Luke Skywalker can communicate to R2-D2 in plain English versus in beeps. R2 has really advanced NLP. And something really interesting has occurred over the last year and a half with NLP, and that it's become largely democratized, almost a commodity. So before, there were only a select few companies that had that incredibly technical and expensive tech, or difficult and expensive technology at their disposal. But over the last year and a half, Google acquired an NLP provider called API.ai, and now it's free. And it's amazing. It's powered by Google's data, and by the way, they've changed the name. It's called Dialogflow now. Facebook acquired another NLP provider called Wit.ai, and now it's free, and it supports over 30 languages. And then, players like IBM Watson, they're not free, but at least they're more accessible. So this really interesting, mix of things have come together at the same time. One, the rise of messaging channels that allow bots like Facebook Messenger, and two, the democratization of natural language processing. And that's why bots now. But in essence, again, bots are a means to an end, and essentially they're essential to meeting customers' expectations on the communication channels that they prefer. So how can your company use a chatbot? So we talked about some of the major brands that are currently working on bots. We're powering, as I mentioned, bots for some of the largest companies, like even Patron Tequila, where we created their bot tender, which is a bartender that's a bot. Wow. Among others. But I did want to take a moment to highlight something that we actually created called, I'll show you. So here goes.
Every big brand is building a chatbot. Bots help companies reach more people, sell more, and offer better customer service. Problem is, building a bot takes hundreds of hours. Coding, natural language processing, content mapping, testing, artificial intelligence, quality assurance, testing, bot deployment knowledge. All this costs money, which big businesses can afford, but small businesses can't. That's why the people at Reply.ai, a startup that builds chatbots, created me. I'm BotBot, the bot that builds bots. I can help small business owners with no technical expertise build messenger bots in just 5 minutes from their phones.
That's awesome!
I know, right? Here, I'll show you how. First, pick a bot template that fits your small business best. Like a fitness bot that books classes at gyms and fitness studios. Or an answer bot that answers your customers' most common questions. Or the food bot that helps with food delivery. So, let's say you have a restaurant. We chat on Messenger to create your bot. You can give it a name, connect it to the restaurant delivery service like Eat Street. Define the details of your service and integrate your bot smoothly into your business. Finally, we publish it on your restaurant's Facebook page. And just like that, it's alive! Now anyone can order food from your bot. BotBot turns what used to be a complex and expensive development process into a simple conversation, and a simple conversation into new business.
Bot.
You're welcome, welcome.
We're going to give you some free stuff. Clara just gave you a free bot, so thank you, Clara.
There we are. You're welcome.
So we established that it is accessible to businesses of all sizes, but what it does, it forces you to do one thing without question, is you have to put a structure around your culture, right? You have to put a structure around the tone and voice, make some decisions about the tone and voice of your brand, literally, because you're going to be typing out scripts that are going to respond. And it could say, yes, it could say sure, or say, you bet, you know? So there's a lot of things that happen, and that type of structure is, so every 2 years at Bigbuzz, we do something called a culture session where we talk about what we do well, what we want to do better, and things. So something that came up a few years ago when Deb was with us working on it is that the team gave feedback that they want more structure around the culture. And it's funny, you know, it's classic cobbler's kids have no shoes. I was like, oh, structure around the culture. That's interesting. I was like, wait a minute, that's what we tell all the brands that we work with. So we decided to do that. But this is a must-have. You can't start creating a chatbot and creating this kind of structure, this kind of dialogue and decision engine that you require to build a good chatbot without that kind of structure. So I'm going to pass it to Deb to talk to you about that.
All right. So not only should you have a structure, you really must have a structure. And I am not talking about a cookie cutter structure. I'm not talking about stamping out the same tools for every single person and every single organization. We're talking about creating a premier service experience. Because when it comes down to your brand image and your brand identity, ultimately what it means is, what do you want people to say about you? When they've had one interaction or 100,000 interactions, what do you want them to consistently come away with? What do you want them to say about you? So whatever you think of Disney, you know, some people are big fans, some are not. I don't think anyone can contest the fact that it's probably one of the most successful businesses on the planet. Would you agree with that? It is not by accident, and it's not, and we say pixie dust, right? And that's the term that all the years I was at Disney we used. We're just going to sprinkle a little pixie dust over it. But let me tell you, it is really, really hard work. But when you put a structure in place that gives your employees the tools that enable them to understand what it looks like and feels like to deliver exceptional service, and when they understand what their expectations are, and your leaders can coach back to those expectations, then it becomes more natural. And it also helps you when you're looking at hiring right fit. How do I get right fit people who will do this every single day? So when we talk about this concept of the premier service experience, it really comes down to making that emotional connection. And you know, I'm not talking about silliness. I'm talking about tapping into how people feel about you, your company, their experience, and ultimately your brand, and how do they feel about doing business with you. So this concept of creating a premier experience, and all premier companies do this. You know, if you think about Ritz-Carlton, they say, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And the inference is not only are our guests ladies and gentlemen, you know, alluding to an upper echelon, but our employees are not just housekeepers and custodians and dishwashers. They are ladies and gentlemen serving our ladies and gentlemen. So this concept of making this emotional connection is important. I once had a big box company that made me cry. You know, that's not the kind of emotional experience you want to give to your customers, right? Over a Christmas present for my husband and how mean the manager was. And that's not easy to make me do, but he really did. He made me cry. We're talking about experiences like, and I'm going to tell you a Disney story. We're great, you know, we were always great at the Disney company about passing around guest letters and so forth. And once when I was a leader in an operation, we got this great guest letter passed down to us from Michael Eisner at the time to share with one another, but also to share with our cast members. And it was around something that was such a very, very simple thing. And the letter was very briefly was this. Two women who were sisters, who were getting on in age, had been estranged for many years. And this is everything she wrote in the letter. Were estranged for many years. They decided to bury the hatchet, and they decided to come to Walt Disney World to get back together and to have some fun and have a magical experience, and they did. There was one point where they were in the Magic Kingdom, And one of the sisters was taking a picture of the other in front of the castle. And as cast members do every day, dozens of times, it's just something they do. They think nothing of it. One of the custodial folks stepped up and said, hey, why don't you get in the picture and we'll take a picture of the two of you in front of the castle. And said, oh, that's great. And so he did. The letter went on to say that a few months after they came back from Walt Disney World, happy in their renewed relationship, one of the sisters was diagnosed with cancer and she died shortly after. And she said, I still get emotional. She said, this is the only picture I have of the two of us. Here's what I want you to know. To create a service experience, a premier service experience, to tap into that emotional connection, it's often the little things.
Right.
Disney spends millions, maybe billions of dollars on attractions and new lands and movies and all the things that they do, which they need to do to keep it fresh. But the things they get the most letters about are things the cast members do for the guests. By far and away, the highest percentage.
Seemingly
Take a
little
picture.
things that become so
Little.
important in
Yep.
somebody's life. Yeah.
That become so important. So when we talk about making an emotional connection, the best way to do that, and to be sure that it happens consistently, because here's another key point. Superior service has to happen consistently across all lines of your business. A person can't get on your website and have a horrible experience. Come to the register and have a great experience. Get on a phone call with a customer service rep and have a horrible experience. It has to be at all touch points. And at any one of those touch points, if it falls down, then you're impacting your brand identity and your brand reputation and how people feel about you, because those are the things they tend to remember. True? Do you send out surveys and people that had a great experience don't respond, but people that had a horrible experience, they can't wait to tell you about it, right? It's the same for everybody in business. So one of the things that I did based on my Disney experience and then my individual consulting experience and understanding what my clients were needing on a regular basis was to create what we call a Service Advantage Foundation. And this is to provide, again, not a cookie-cutter foundation, but a foundation that provides the tools that enable you to create a customer-centric culture and give your employees the tools that they need to deliver this premier service consistently over and over again. Otherwise, you leave everything open to interpretation, right?
Absolutely.
How many times do we have, I've worked with a large electronics company. The president of the organization was so sincere. They hadn't moved the customer service needle in 3 years. He was personally going around to all of his branches and saying, we got to give great service. Cheerleading isn't enough. He was saying that. His people really wanted to, but they all interpreted what that meant in a different way. So they weren't really moving that needle. Something like a Service Advantage Foundation or any foundation you put in place provides those tools. There are 3 key elements to the Service Advantage Foundation, and the first is the statement of purpose. And that is, it's not a vision statement, it's not a mission statement. Those are good things, but they're separate things. It's a very simple thing that says, what are your employees going to get on board to do? What is the common goal? I wake up, I get dressed, I go to my job. Every day, what am I supposed to do? A large healthcare organization that I worked with had a purpose statement that said, we're going to create compassion. Now, here's the interesting thing. What does compassion mean? What does that look like? And if I am checking people in and I'm conscious of HIPAA regulations and privacy, what will compassion look like for me versus the nurse that's taking care of that patient face to face? So the purpose statement says, that statement of your purpose says, here's what we are on board to do every day. Very simple. The second element of the foundation is to put your standards of service in place. And standards of service help your employees to deliver on the purpose every single day. Your standards of service say, here are the 4 or 5 top things that are most important to us. For many organizations I work with, it's no surprise safety is usually number 1, right? Healthcare, often compassion. But then it's not enough to just develop those standards of service. You have to clearly define them. Again, if I ask for each of you to define safety as it relates to your business, it would look like something different for every single business. So they have to be clearly defined to understand, what does safety mean to me if I'm scooping ice cream on Main Street? What does safety mean to me if I'm a radiologist at a hospital? What does safety mean to me if I'm running a casino, right? So the standards of service support the statement of purpose and clearly define what is it we look like when we are delivering on that purpose. And then the last key piece of your foundation is what we call the standards of behaviors. Because again, at each tier, we don't want to leave anything open to interpretation. So when I'm delivering compassion, what am I doing? When I'm delivering courtesy, what am I doing? Am I making eye contact and smiling? Am I proactively approaching people who look lost? You know, what am I doing? What are the actions that I'm taking when I am delivering on the standards of behaviors in order to support my standards of service, which then deliver on the purpose? So, you know, overly simplified a bit, but quite honestly, that's what we mean when we talk about a service advantage foundation. It provides these three key tools that are clearly defined and trained to your employees. Your leaders must support them. When you've done all of that, your leaders have to then hold people accountable. Because once employees understand what's exactly expected of me, then leaders must hold them accountable for delivering on those things. But the foundation takes all of the guesswork out of that. No guesswork, no interpretation. And it looks different for every single company with these tools. And I've applied this foundation to casinos and to healthcare organizations and to a small family-owned hardware distributor, to a large electronics company, to entertainment companies. It works for everyone, but the trick is you design it to align with your culture so that you deliver to your customers what they want and need from you, and you create those customers for life, and then therefore that brand loyalty.
Yeah, and it works. I think the thing that struck me when we first worked together was the idea that the bottom level of that foundation, the standards of behavior, we're telling your team this is what it looks like, this is what you need to do, and it gets very specific. So,
Yes.
so how may we move this down to technology and transfer that into something like a chatbot?
Yeah, great question. You know, for starters, you know, what I think it's always best to kind of look at some examples of chatbots and see how those pillars have been applied. So these are three of my favorite notable bot examples. This first one on the left, I think, is really the embodiment of how critical having a structure in place is, and creating those the standards of service. And this is Casper's bot. Casper is a mattress company. It's sort of like the Warby Parker of mattresses, if you will. And they were one of the first to kind of dip a toe into bot waters with their bot. And they very easily could have just created a bot that was all about commerce and just now buy a mattress in a chat bubble. And a lot of companies get tempted by that. Like they just see it as like another way to sell their items. But Casper took a step back and really thought about what were their standards. What is their brand's promise, and then we're really thoughtful about how does that then manifest itself in this new, incredibly intimate channel, which is messaging. With that, with their brand promise in mind, that they understand, how to get you to sleep better, what ails you, they created the InsomnoBot 3000. And it's a bot that you can only message between 2 and 5 a.m. When you're having difficulty sleeping. And it's a fairly simple bot. It'll chat with you, like it'll order you a pizza if you want it. And basically, what they did with that is that it opened the door to building trust, to starting that conversation. And sure, eventually that bot will be capable of selling you a mattress, but it's so critical to sort of open that door with that moment of understanding and delivering value in that really intimate and personal way. Next, is the Cindy Gallup bot. So how many of you actually, sorry, we don't have the fancy thing, but Cindy Gallup, how many of you are familiar with who she is? So Cindy Gallop is this prolific woman in the media advertising world. She is not only a really successful in her industry, she's also a huge proponent of bridging the gender gap, the wage gap, and she's this like brilliant British lady who curses like a sailor, so she's really again this champion of women's equality. So on Equal Pay Day, a couple of organizations, including the Muse and PayScale, wanted to get together and create something that, again, that started that conversation and really delivered value in a personalized way and at scale. And they actually approached Cindy Gallop and asked her, in an ideal world, every woman would be able to get a pep talk from Cindy before she goes in to ask for a raise. Obviously, Cindy's only one person, really hard to do that. So instead, we botified Cindy. And now you can have a conversation with you. She'll walk you through it, pulling from different APIs to source what are the industry standards of asking for a raise, et cetera, and how much you should ask for your particular profession. If you're a dude and you tried to use this bot, I'm pretty sure it tells you to F off. But anyway, it's a really, just a great example of, the power of that kind of one-to-one personalized attention at scale, and in a really kind of profound way. And then the final example that I want to show, and it has to do with, in particular with the standards of behavior. And this is from a company called Lifefolder. They know that one of the toughest things can be discussing end-of-life decision-making. It's a really uncomfortable process. Like, I think everybody here probably gets a little bit of the heebie-jeebies when thinking about it. So they created Emily Bot. And it's a bot that helps walk you through that end-of-life decision-making process, which, again, super uncomfortable, but, a perfect opportunity to leverage bot technology to take that, really intimate experience that, and also to a certain extent helping their own employees, because I don't know who wants to be on the receiving end of that conversation anyway. So, right. So three really great examples.
Three really emotional examples. I mean, the first one is about empathy. You're not sleeping.
Yeah.
I'm here for you, right? And obviously the last one, very emotional. So.
Yeah. I will say that the InsomnoBot 3000, though, since it's on SMS, it can initiate a conversation with you. So my poor co-founder had some rather unsavory questions to answer at 3 a.m. when Insomno texted him, and his girlfriend was like, "Who's texting you at 3 a.m.?" And she was like, "It's a bot, I swear."
I swear.
So
wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes it can backfire, but look, that's why it's so critical to have, sort of
Type monitoring.
Exactly, and optimization capabilities. So a couple bots that learn the hard way. So weather bots. One of the first bots to launch on Facebook Messenger was Poncho, and it's an adorable bot. It's a hipster cat. But if you think about it, the standards of behavior maybe weren't as adhered to as they should have been. Because if you think about it, when it comes to bots, there's this great Larry Page quote, which is it useful enough that you're using it twice a day and you're getting value from it? Or does it pass the toothbrush test? If the answer is yes, that you are using it, at least like twice a day, then an app makes so much more sense. I check my weather app at least once a day, and that's also information that I'd much rather consume visually versus all the taps that it takes to type out what is the weather today in Austin versus just swiping, seeing a smiling sun or sad cloud.
Drippy rain, which is my
Exactly.
favorite. Drippy sun, sorry.
Exactly.
So it's very confusing to me.
Yeah, or I just came from New York, cold and terrible. So essentially, it's really kind of examining there's this flurry to create bots, but really kind of be critical about whether or not it meets those standards of behavior before you immediately botify something. Next, text generating bots. This is more just a cautionary tale. You really have to. It's critical to have that feedback loop with your customers. So I don't know. I'm sure many of you are familiar. Microsoft launched Tay-Bot. It was a Twitter bot that generated language based on how users were interacting with it. The internet, being the dark and scary place that it is, quickly turned it into a Holocaust-denying, racist Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's nice.
and
Way to
it
go,
was,
Microsoft.
Yeah. Google image that for evidence. But really, and although there are some conspiracy theorists that think that Microsoft did this on purpose to create the world's greatest profanity filter. So I'll let you guys go down your own internet rabbit holes for that. And then finally, and I have here bot bullies. So this other element to kind of highlight is the fact that, especially with bots, the average consumer is kind of at like blind date territory with a bot. It's still very new. They're not sure if they're actually talking to one. They don't know where that line is. And as a result, people are very curious. They want to see where the seams are. And a big way that we've seen people experiment with where those seams are is being really ruthless to bots. People are mean. And as soon as they think that there are no sort of repercussions, everything goes out the window. And at any time that we have a client that wants to look at their transcripts, we have to kind of prep them, understand that this is just a dark part of humanity. So it's so critical to have those standards of service and standards of behavior in place, so that it's that kind of bullying isn't a variable that will happen,
right.
But it's also an opportunity for you as a brand to take that and own it. With Starbucks, when we launched their bot, they had a choice. Do they just like, oh, sorry, I don't understand when somebody curses at it, or they actually took it as an opportunity to show personality. And to respond, well, you're going to use that language on me, like I think it denied you a
minus
latte.
2 gold stars. Yeah.
Exactly. So really, that's an inevitability. People are going to be crass and mean, and I have some horror stories that I will share maybe later over a taco. With regards to news and weather bots, the important thing there is that, again, a lot of these media outlets kind of immediately created bots that were just RSS feeds in a chat bubble, but now I think that we'll see a shift away from just, again, repurposing one thing and putting it into this new medium, but instead creating, leveraging their curatorial voice to provide value. And one of my favorite new examples of that is the New Yorker. They very easily could have just created a bot that here's the newest New Yorker article, but instead they realized that they have so much power in curation. So they created a poetry bot that helps walk you through, it helps get you into and learn about poetry. And I would love more poetry in my life, but who knows where to start, but I trust the New Yorker's voice. Just a couple parting words on what are best practices when it comes to taking Debbie's incredible structure and applying it to bots. This first point is, the measure of your bot isn't necessarily in its ability to mimic a human so much as its ability to provide a service. There's this great quote by David Cancel, the co-founder of Drift Messaging, which is that, if the Wright brothers' plane didn't have to flap its wings like a bird in order to achieve flight, why should we assume that a chatbot has to be able to communicate like a human in order to achieve intelligence? So when you are creating these chatbot experiences, in particular if it's part of that customer, an integral part of the customer service organization, you really have to choose. Is my bot's objective to provide that service or to trick the users into thinking it's talking to something it's not? And if you think about it, those objectives are kind of conflicting. So you have to make that decision early on. So really critical that you kind of keep that as the goal. Sometimes, amazing natural language processing would be great, but maybe the user just wants to click a couple buttons to get to something versus, having to type it all out. Next point is that you're never just building a bot so much as launching what we call a conversational strategy. This isn't like web development or app development where you spend so much time with creating that initial product and then put it in the market and maybe launch a few updates. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So it's really critical to kind of think about it in that way, to think big but start small, and then as you're incrementally gaining customers' trusts, add on responsibilities to the bot, and eventually have that conversational layer across your entire customer journey. And finally, what excites me the most is this question of who are the bot makers? With so many tools out there that are code-free, et cetera, this isn't something that, that needs to just live within a development organization, but instead, those that know the subject matter the best can really be driving, or should really be driving, bot creation. And I think that it's only a matter of time before you're at a family gathering and some niece is like, oh, I'm a conversation designer. It's definitely a budding career path. I think liberal arts majors everywhere can rejoice. But the hard part isn't necessarily the technology so much as the human element in that conversation design.
Fantastic. I want to open it up. There's a microphone out there. I want to open it up to questions from the crowd. So as you're making your way up there, I want to ask I'll throw a couple ideas out. Two things, what might that human touch be that is lost, and do people care if it's a bot or if it's a human? And one of the things I'll use is one of my favorite Disney stories is, and Deb will confirm this, is that people get asked every day on Main Street, what time is the 3 o'clock parade? So we call it the 3 o'clock parade story. And the answer isn't, asshole, it's 3 o'clock.
It hasn't sunk in yet. Look, they're like, what?
Yeah. What time is the 3 o'clock parade? So the answer that they're typically trained for is like, well, you know what? It starts at 3, but you should show about 10 minutes early because it gets really crowded. And you know what? I'll tell you, if you sit in front of the barber shop, they leave the doors open in there. Air conditioning comes out right on your back. It's a fantastic place to watch the parade. So that's that. Can we do that through scripting? Can we anticipate that kind of thing? And, since it's a protocol, I would say yes. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll throw it to the both of you, that human touch, okay. and do people care?
That's a really interesting question, and I really think it's very circumstantial. I am old school, so I am very much in favor of human touch. I like face-to-face customer service for the most part. On the other hand, when my internet is down and I am working on a big project and I'm on a deadline and I call my service provider and I get that person on the phone who says, first of all, let me tell you how much we love you and how much we appreciate your loyalty. I have been known to say up front, I don't care how much you love me. Let's get this straight right now. I want you to fix my internet, right?
Right.
And she says, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me see what we can do. It's like, oh, my gosh. and so really, it's so difficult because we're dealing with human beings. So can we, when we're face-to-face, it's much easier to say, I recognize a certain emotion going on with this person. This person is mad. This person is frustrated, right?
Cut through the pleasantries.
Cut through the pleasantries. Let's just take care of them. On the other hand, when you're dealing with technology, not such an easy thing to do. But I will say, to Clara's point, to blend the two is absolutely possible. And I think first you have to understand, who are your customers? What is our service culture? Do we have our foundation in place, not only for training our employees in their face-to-face, but when we get ready to design chatbots or websites or other types of technology, let's apply those concepts to the technology so that you have this beautiful blend. It can absolutely be done, and we should be taking advantage of what technology can do for us and for our customers.
Absolutely.
And understand how to make it work.
Clara, do you want to comment on that one, or we'll go to the question?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Debbie. She's awesome.
So let's go to our question.
Hi.
Hello.
This is a great session.
Oh,
My name is Lorraine Jones. I'm an IT project manager, and I've worked in customer service for a long time. And this is extremely intriguing to me, and I'd love to know from Caroline's perspective, when you're implementing something like this, oftentimes when we're implementing technology into non-tech firms, there's a disconnect, right, between the business and the technology piece. So for companies in here today that are looking to implement something like this, where do you typically see the breakdowns or the challenges and the gaps between implementing something like this and making sure that the business processes are there to support something like this?
Great question.
Yeah, that is
Clara,
a great question. We're trying to figure that out. So a couple things. This is why
I can help you with that.
Yeah. Oh, great. So this is why I think is so critical that last point about who are the bot makers, because that's, I think, part of the biggest challenge is that organizations are still defining which department even owns bots. It's not like it's very similar to when social media and Facebook became a thing. It's not like there were VPs of social sitting around waiting for something to do. Companies had to mature to that point where there was a task force assigned and then eventually a whole dedicated department. So to a certain extent, like that's probably the biggest challenge is identifying who is going to own this, we are seeing the very beginnings of it. Nike just hired their first bot czar. Her title is VP of one-to-one communication or something like that. So we're seeing the very beginnings of it, and it's really exciting. But I think the challenge number one is who's on that team, and then the second challenge that we see is that it's not that does this organization do they want a bot? It's that you start talking to one group about a bot, and then it's they all come out of the woodwork, and they're like, well, we want a bot for this, and let's botify that, and we want a bot that too. And it's you have to have that discipline of what, again, thinking big but starting small. So it's critical that when you also are choosing how you're bringing this to market, that you're working with a vendor or with a tool set that has that extensibility. And that's why I mentioned there's a lot of products out there that have code-free building environments. So it's really critical that you use that because, marketing's going to have an idea. The customer support team is going to have an idea. We work with a lot of insurance companies. Claims processing, they want to botify that whole process. So, I would say it's one, understand that it's going to be a challenge to identify who needs to be in the room, but, there are no rules. Maybe bring an English major in there. I don't know. And then second is make sure that you be prepared for the demand that's going to occur, and make sure that you're choosing the right provider that will offer that kind of extensibility. You don't want black box development in this case, because then every time you want to make a change and somebody else has an idea, you have to go back to them.
And let me just add to what Claire said. Even before that, I think when I work with companies who have a lot of technology, one of the places that they fall down is that they think about, what do we need with this website? What do we need with this chatbot? What do we need versus what do my customers need? What do my employees need to make this work? So you have a bunch of brilliant IT people in a room.
Classic know your audience.
Doing all of this design work, and they don't get the employees involved. I say bring an employee in the room. When you have a customer conversation, when you have an irate customer, what is it about? What do they say? What are their frustrations? Nobody knows better than that person that has to deal with those people what's going on. This large electronics store I worked with, they were getting screamed at because the website kept crashing. When they went to talk to the website people, the website said, well, the customers just don't know what they're doing, right?
Right.
So
that's never the answer.
The beginning piece is not just to figure out what do we need with this piece of technology, what do our customers need, what do our employees need, and how do we co-design this so the chatbot is effective for everyone and makes everyone consistent in their delivery. So that would be a recommendation as well.
So it's not so different than the evolution of digital marketing that we've seen. It is just a new medium. So let's start with research, right? Everything in advertising and marketing should start with solid research.
Right.
Understand your audience, and then work from that. I'm going to throw it back out to the question on the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I've been here since last Thursday waiting for this session.
Oh my
it was
God.
terrific.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
And I'm happy I didn't have to use Slido.
You
This
have made
is good.
this possible.
Appreciate that. So I'm coming from the pharmaceutical industry, so heavily regulated, heavily scrutinized. As with pharma and social media, it's very nerve-wracking for the clients because of those conversations about adverse events and reporting and all that. So we're slow to move. In Chatbot, though, there's a huge interest. However, we may be dipping into tech for the sake of tech, because with these conversations, it might not be, you may have to vet some of the questions first, or some of the canned responses.
Compliance.
So, exactly. So as the experts, do you have a POV on, is pharma feasible for chatbots? Should we not even do it? Is it tech for tech's sake?
You've dipped your toe. at
Yeah,
least.
we actually have a pharma client. I can't say who it is because it hasn't launched yet, but yeah, I think, look, people are happier when they understand things better. And the best way that we as human beings have to understand things is asking questions. So I think that, and people, the reason why I think, voter registration, for instance, is so painful is because, like, who wants to read through all that crap? I just want to see what's relevant for me. And I think with pharma, it's the exact same scenario. What is the name of the insert that comes with every, drug?
ISI or the PI? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The little, like, flimsy, like, wax paper that has, like, teeny tiny lettering on it.
This
Like,
might kill you, basically.
yeah,
Okay.
like, I don't want to read
yeah.
that, but I want to know. I want to know what's relevant to me. So that I think that's like a golden use case for a bot. That instead of having to, when I'm like, like being able to just ask my medication, hey, like, what's, here's the other medications that I take, like tell it more about me, and then have it give me information back that's highly personalized to me. So which I know that's like a HIPAA huge red flag because it's patient information, but like we can get there.
But it's one-to-one. Is that really, how much of a concern is that? Maybe you could even comment, like, it is one-to-one, and if it is a secure connection, isn't it the ideal place other than CVS where she's going, so how are you? And how's that rash
Scream
on
it across
your,
the aisle.
Certainly. Very helpful. Thank you. Then a quick follow-up. Surely it's blinded case study, but is it branded or unbranded, your pharma client, may I ask?
It's branded.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, let's go to our next gentleman.
Hi, thanks. Great panel.
Thank you.
I'm running an agency in London, and we're looking at rolling out various chatbots for our clients at the minute. And I'm really interested in particularly the part around brand and personality on those clients. I wondered if you had any thoughts on sort of establishing the personality of bots as an individual or as a team of individuals, because sometimes if you try and loop all of the personalities into one place, then the clients are saying, well, hang on, you're supposed to know about the IT, but I'm asking you about something else, and whether actually you're better off keeping it as one personality or a group of them.
So I'm gonna jump in as the agency guy real quick and say I don't think it's that different than any other brand assignment, right? It's finding that common voice, and my creative director who's in the audience will love me for this, but we really do get our expertise is in distilling all those things down to a single idea. You're a very individual person, so what are the things that make you up and make you different than everybody here? That's what we do. Its beginnings start with a group, but somebody has to really stand up. We've seen this with brands that we work with. The process starts with the decision-making executives in the room saying, here's our culture. No, I think it's this, and by the end of the week, or 3 days that one time, which was horribly too fast, we know exactly the voice that they want and the type of service that they want to give. So from the agency perspective, at least my idea of it. Thoughts down the line here?
It really surprises me how often, even working with large corporations who've been in business a long time, that one of the first questions I ask them, I said, describe for me your corporate culture, and they can't. So if you don't understand who you are, then it's impossible for you to design service that can be distilled down and help your customers, right? And your employees certainly won't know who you are if you don't know who you are. So it really comes from this self-understanding, and in fact, in the handout at the end, if you wanted to download it, it really begins with what are the things I should look at first?
Yeah.
The very first step is you have to ask yourself, let me open this up and say, and ask others in your company, because they'll probably have a different idea than the executives do. Who are we? What is our culture? How do we make decisions? How do we put policies and processes in place? What are our policies and processes around customer service? What's detrimental to us versus what helps us? And you really have to have a core understanding of that first. And there's so many companies that we work with don't have that. Yeah.
We actually work with a lot of creative agencies that use our platform essentially as the Photoshop of bots. Happy to give you or any other agency folks a Sandbox account.
Definitely connect with Clara. We got time for one or two if you make it.
Mine will be quick.
Yeah.
And it's really maybe a question for you, Kevin. Is this an opportunity, do you see an opportunity, or have you already seen opportunities for companies to use this type of technology to add levels of service, right? So
100%.
they've got freemium, they've got free service providers, free service to their customers that they can use for the bots. And
It's
then,
a 24/7
Yeah.
person, for lack of a better word, that can fulfill your customers' needs. God, that is
Right,
like
and
the
then pay
greatest thing ever.
for, you know,
And
a
she
different
can only
level of
say
service.
it can only say what you tell it to say. Is that like a dream for every brand in the world? So yeah, it is such an opportunity, and that's why I kind of beg of you to look at it as just a new piece of media that you can manipulate, or
Yeah,
not
I
a
was
bad
thinking
word,
about-
that you can employ
Yeah, I was thinking about how IT companies have where, you get maybe an hour to talk to an IT person, but then if you pay them some extra money, you can talk to an actual professional. And so this is another way for
Yes, the human
companies that
handoff.
aren't necessarily, support companies for IT to
Yes.
kind of separate their levels of service too.
Yes, and I'm happy
Pretty
to,
cool.
we're all happy to take some questions after. Let's see if
Yeah.
we can get to just that one more, and then we'll close it up and show you where you can download your goodies and come up and get some of your swag.
Hi, I'm Shannon from Bugaboo Strollers. Really interested in developing an app for our customers because we get a ton of questions constantly.
Yeah.
How do you make that transition though from when somebody is using a bot and they need to talk to a real life person? How do you make that seamless when you don't have somebody at the ready?
I know somebody who can do that exact thing. Yeah, great
Yeah.
question, great question.
Great question. And so our platform is built in a way that we can create that seamless handoff. So at any point during a conversation, a live agent can take over and then get out of it. But I think maybe your question was, what if you don't have that person? So in that case, we start with an away message essentially. So the bot will, at the end of the day, what the bot is doing before it's handing off to an agent is collecting context. So even if that live agent isn't immediately available, which is the ideal scenario, what can happen is you just collect that context, and then the bot can just explain like, look, I've collected your information. Susan will be in touch with you in X whenever office hours or hours of operation resume. And as long as that customer support agent can deliver on the promise that customer doesn't have to retell their whole story, and Susan, when she gets to you, has that context, I think you can make that a really successful experience. But what's so exciting about bots is never having to talk to a stranger again. They can see all of my information. And so whether it might not be immediate, but it can still be seamless in that way.
Fantastic. Well, that's a wrap. So here's some information. We got some things. If you go to this landing page, you can get some downloads. Yes, the whole PDF presentation is there. If something's missing, you can email us. That information is there as well. I really want to thank my panel of brilliant
Thank
women, and thank you all for showing up
Thank you for
and
being here.
engaging
Yeah.
us.
Thanks for coming.
And thank
Been
you so
fun.
much. We're around if you'd like to talk to us. Totally unprompted.
Aw, shucks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you guys for being here.